Hey everybody, and welcome to Q&A Wednesday. I'm just trying to get it all set up here. I was running a little bit late today, just because, I was training. But I have a great topic for you today. It's, I'm going to keep it really super simple because I really, you see everything that's going on in the world right now, and you hear about people talking about how that person was super healthy, but yet they passed away with COVID. And so I really quickly want to talk today a little bit about how healthy our country really truly is, because I have some thoughts on that. I've kind of watched, if you really dig into statistics and the numbers and really follow the data and really pay attention to where our country has gone when it comes to health and wellness, I'm going to back up and tell you why I feel this way, not just the numbers, but what has happened over the last couple of decades and why things aren't the way that you would think that they would be, because what you think is healthy, your definition of healthy and my definition of healthy are probably a little bit different. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The question is how much of our country is truly healthy. It's not the numbers are not fabulous. So, really when everything started to go down in 2020, although I think it started long before that, I kept saying, wow, this is Mother Nature's way of telling us, hey, that standard American diet is not working for you. There's really some major problems, of course, things like our environment and the toxins and there's a lot going on there. So I'm going to keep it super, super simple today. I'm not going to give you a bunch of numbers. I am going to give you one set of numbers, and we'll talk a little bit about what those mean. Meanwhile, you can look up all the other statistics. There's an absolute increase, just a phenomenal rise in obesity and type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, and that is a problem, right? So the numbers that I want to talk to you about really quickly is that out of our country, right, 88% of our population here in the United States is 88%. Hear that again. 88% of our country is metabolically unhealthy. So that means that only 12% of the population is metabolically healthy. So we're going to talk about a little bit about what that means, because I get a lot of people that say, I used to be able to get away with whatever I wanted to eat in my 20s. And I'm like, yes. And that's done the damage that you're now seeing in your 50s and 60s. It just is now starting to show you on the outside what that chronic inflammation is doing to you. So keep that in mind. Now let's really quickly define this, because of course, that is a problem these days. Everybody's trying to change the definition. And so nobody's really speaking the same language, unfortunately. Really, when I talk about healthy, for most people, what they think is healthy is just not sick, right? Whatever that means, right? If we get sick, then that's a problem. We need to go to the doctor. We need to have some health care. And I just don't think that way. That to me, that's sick care. Health care would be, let's keep ourselves from getting sick. Let's help our immune systems. Let's, eat the right products. I don't think anybody can deny that if you're eating a bunch of garbage food, right? Because to me, there's a huge difference between food and food-like substances. They are not the same thing. We have a lot of processed food on our shelves these days, and there's so much noise and conflicting information. A lot of people will say, well, I just don't even understand, this says healthy on it. And I'm like, let's read how many ingredients that has. If it is highly processed, it is not a health food. As a matter of fact, it's not a food, right? So what I think is healthy is the lack of symptoms that are any sort of illness. So again, you don't always see it, right? You don't necessarily know that you've got inflammation going on within your system. So, I think it's greater than this. I'm really just talking about the physical aspects of health. We could go deep into, mental health and emotional health, stress, and how all those play such a huge role, because they do. So keep in mind that, when somebody says, that guy was a runner and he was super healthy and he just dropped dead or whatever, I'm like, that's because you don't know what's going on the inside. There's a lot more variables when it comes to genetics, when it comes to age, like I said, you don't know what they did when they were in their teens and 20s. It does affect us in the future. Plus the genetics, right? I do know that type 2 diabetes runs in my family. And as a almost 47-year-old, watching my mother pass away from chronic problems with diabetes, it's something I really take into account when I look at my nutrition, how I'm the exercise that I do. There's a lot to that. But for today's episode, let's keep this super, super simple. Let's just talk about the fact that to be physically healthy, it means the lack of any sort of inflammation or degradation within the body. And you can't always see or know that. Sometimes once you see the symptoms, you're already full blown, right? Again, I don't have the numbers for the incidences of diabetes and all those things, but it's a pretty big percentage of our population is either diabetic or pre-diabetic and has no idea, because until you show up on testing as diabetic, you don't know, right? So keep that in mind, that there's a lot that plays a role there. And really it comes down to just taking better care of yourself. If you just look anecdotally over the last, 3-4 decades, right? 40 plus years, and you've watched, first of all, we saw how low-fat diets worked out. Yeah, because that increased sugar and amount of everything. And of course, the rise of obesity just was exponential. So again, you really kind of have to listen to the science, but the science has to be correct, and it's always ongoing. We're always coming up with a theory and testing it out and seeing if it's better information than we used to have. And of course, these days we know that the microbiome plays a role. We know that there's so much more to it. So again, keep in mind that we're going to be super, super easy. We're just going to talk about making sure that what healthy really means. Okay. So a couple of things, we talked about what that I think is healthy and what you think is healthy are probably a little bit different. Not only that, but it's not even just the nutrition, although that plays a huge role. A lot of our foods are so convenient, but they're full of things that make them shelf stable, right? So all of these foods have toxins, and because that's what additives and preservatives are, right? Those affect our bodies. So again, even if you don't show signs and symptoms of having any issues, those things show up later in life. That's why type 2 diabetes was called adult onset diabetes, right? Because most people didn't have any incidents of that until they were older. And so now, because they've been eating way too many carbohydrates, or they have a genetic predisposition for it, those things tend to show up later in life. But unfortunately, now we are seeing those things happen in younger and younger people, including infants, right? So what mom does while she's pregnant has a big effect on how baby grows up. As a matter of fact, what environment the baby has in the womb makes a big difference when it's born, because if the baby realizes if it's not getting enough to eat, if it's not getting the nutrition that it needs, it assumes that it's going to be born into a world like that, and it's already predisposed to have obesity and to hold on to body fat, because again, that's the survival mechanism. Fat stores are your body's survival mechanism. So keep in mind that there's a lot that plays a role in there, where you live, if you live in the city, if you live, the air, like all of those things make a big difference. So you think about the majority of the diseases that we deal with these days, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, actually are environmental. Now, again, you might genetically be predisposed to those, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have to deal with that. If you think about that, the genes as to being a light switch, right? Like it's there. It's in your body, but if you don't flick it on, you're not going to deal with that disease. And of course, as knowing that diabetes runs in my family, not just my mother, but my grandmother, and my grandmother wasn't overweight. So again, I know that it's there. I actually do test my blood sugar at this point during different intervals, just to see how my body's doing and see what's playing a bigger role. But I know that I'm predisposed for that. That was the main reason that I chose to get healthy 10 years ago. I'm doing pretty decent. I still have, if you saw on Instagram, I had a donut this weekend because, again, I made myself earn it. But again, I'm trying to stay as healthy as possible. All right, so a couple things really quick that I want to make sure that you understand is that what you eat makes a huge difference, okay? And again, I'm not going to get too deep into it. You can go back and watch all my videos. But when it comes to, when they say that red meat's a problem, not necessarily, but what you do eat what you ate. So all those things make a difference. If you eat a lot of fast food, if you eat a lot of highly processed food, you may not know that you're not healthy, but you might not be healthy. I remember being bloated and my guts would hurt, and I was kind of like, maybe this is normal. That's not normal. You aren't supposed to be uncomfortable. Your digestive system shouldn't be causing you pain and grief and having issues. So again, sometimes we're not quiet enough. We don't pay attention enough to realize that we have a problem, or to be able to thwart it before it really turns into a major problem. There's things that we can do. And listen, a lot of the information that we get is incorrect, right? There's a lot of noise, a lot of conflicting information. I still have people that come to me all the time and say, well, I know I'm not supposed to eat fat. And I'm like, no, what? Why? Why shouldn't you eat fat? Well, because it's bad for me. No. Right? We've debunked that, but we're still really focused on old, antiquated information that doesn't make any sense. And really, what the government's going to give you isn't any better. If y'all remember the food pyramid, where 8 to 11 servings of grains, right? That's a lot of carbohydrates. And realize, you guys, flour is sugar. So it's processed. It's a processed carbohydrate. So again, part of it is educating yourself. Don't take my word for it. Do your own education. That is how I've learned all these years that what we're taught doesn't work. That information is incorrect, because we can see anecdotally that, we all tried the low-fat diet and dropping our calories super low. It doesn't work. We have to feed our body whole, healthy food. So again, remember that what you did in your teens, your 20s and 30s will affect you in your 50s and 60s. So yeah, keep that in mind. There are things that you can do to buffer that. But if you were able to eat the entire pizza and drink beer and just keep going, that might be affecting you now. And as you know, once you get some of those ages, you can't do that anymore because your body doesn't respond the same way. The other thing to remember is that just because your test levels are showing up normal, realize that your primary care provider is going to look at that a little bit different than somebody who really knows how to pay attention. And just because they're normal now doesn't really mean they're normal. It just means that it could be within a normal range, which doesn't always give you the information that you need. What's normal for you might not be optimal, right? So again, you have to take that with a grain of salt. You have to decide what is important to you, what makes you optimal, and realize that sometimes those normal tests are actually pre-diabetic or pre-heart disease or things like that. So you have to educate yourself. And it's unfortunate that in this day and age with so much information out there that a lot of it's garbage. It just is. But in order to be healthy, you have to do the things that make you healthy, right? You can't just guess. You can't just bring home that box of whatever because it says, organic and non-GMO, because honestly, most of the time that is not enough to keep you healthy. So you guys, if you have any questions, I know a whole lot of people hopped on there this afternoon. I would love to go into it more. I'm trying to limit my lives to about 10 minutes because then I do post those on other platforms, but you can see all of those if you subscribe to my YouTube channel under Fillmore Fitness. Go over there. You can see all the back episodes. You can listen to this again. You can also ask questions. I get my very best ideas from you. Either ask it down below. You can also message me directly at Facebook Messenger. I do respond as long as you are professional. But I love it. I love answering questions. I love what I do. You guys, the goal is to be happy and healthy for everyone. I don't want people to be in pain. I don't want people to suffer, and I want people to be optimal. So have an incredible week, you guys. Not sure when the next Meals with Melissa is. We're doing twice a month for Q&A Wednesday and twice a month for Meals with Melissa because I've got a new show coming up on YouTube called Melissa Unfiltered, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. Make sure you hop over there and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can watch every time a new one pops up. I'm working on that. So have a great evening, guys. See you soon.